Hello team and welcome to another ATP Geopolitics video and myself, Jonathan MS Pitts. Ukraine War news update for the 3rd of December 2023. First part thereof, I will be recording my future videos today, the live stream I have with Mark Oliner from Canada, and my second news video and frontline update if I have a chance to do it later today, because I've got to shoot up to Romsey in Hampshire to watch my boy play rugby, and actually that's quite a long excursion, so apologies for that. Let's go to where I normally start. Ukrainian general staff figures for the Russian losses for the day before, all the usual caveats apply. You can find them in the description to this video. 930 personnel is still a heavy loss, a day of heavy losses there. Not over the 1,000 mark, but 930 is still significant as a number. 4 tanks, 11 APVs, so various armoured personnel vehicles, and 8 artillery systems is actually lower than we've seen. This is possibly representative of whether it's, like I said yesterday, going to play a significant role in the statistics we see on a daily basis from now on. 1 drone, 1 cruise missile, 22 vehicles and fuel tanks, that's fairly hefty, and 2 pieces of special equipment. So high with personnel, not so high with other categories. I do not have a list from Andrew Perpetua. He has not compiled a list, and it's not even on the original data sheet. So I can't give you an appraisal of the video evidence of equipment destroyed over the last 24 hours. He did do a live stream explaining his data sheet last night, which is well worth looking into. It's a shorter video. It gives you an understanding of what the criteria are for sort of damaged versus destroyed. Gives you an idea of how he slices and dices the data that he collects. But to look at a few bits and pieces, here we have another book, book M2 here, kind of the middle variant there. You've got a book M1, M2, M3, and all of those variants have been destroyed in the last week. The day before yesterday, a Russian book M2 was reportedly destroyed near Volodymyrivka, and actually Ukraine Battle Map said that would make 5 books destroyed by Ukraine in the past week. They seem to have had a purple patch of destruction of these air defense systems, and that's obviously going to help Ukraine going forward in their sort of combined arms maneuvers and whatnot, and the ability for their aerial assets to operate. These Desert Cross 3000, the Chinese golf carts, as P-Star 11 says, are already burning thanks to Robert Magyar. Quote, our drone operators got acquainted with the golf carts that they placed in Rusna on the left bank. 2 were burned just today. The pilot's verdict? Shit of shit, as expected. So pretty damning of those, but I guess, yes, of course, the Ukrainians are going to be fairly strong in their repudiation of these vehicles, but I guess it's still going to be useful for the Russians, and a light vehicle like that along the banks of the river could well be the right kind of vehicle. So I don't know, but anyway, they are being targeted by drone operators. And talking of drones, this is a post from, or translation by Dmitry from War Translated, saying Russian military reporter combatant Filatov says on Telegram that Russian MOD prioritizes targets for first-person view drones that will bring, quote, spectacular footage rather than actual combat assistance. Russian drone handlers are reluctant to give away drones that will spoil their statistics. This comes in contrast to the Ukrainians, who will spend however many FPV drones to get their targets, even if nothing visual comes out of it. And yeah, that is a useful differentiation between the two forces, and good for the Ukrainians. It means that they are doing the work properly. The Russians are doing it for show. So preliminary, I'm not writing to start an argument, but for the benefit of the cause, and I'm writing about capitalism, which continues privatizing the army for various projects. There is an analytical note on the emergence of the projects of drones by Vladimir Tatarsky and Sudopolatov. It's interesting, but not for the general public. Is a project working? Yes. Kills the enemy, but how? Typical, a recurring situation in all detachments. After the destruction of our antenna and retranslator, we asked to transfer the kamikaze to a neighboring unit to carry out the mission. Comment, I won't give up on remaining kamikazes. I'm financially responsible for them. Each of them costs 45,000 rubles. I'm not going to spoil my reputation and stats. I have no right to transfer them to anyone, and will not. The guys go out and take out all the remains of the equipment and all the birds. If I don't support the statistics, I will not be given 65 birds but 20. Do you hear anything about saving the lives of the infantry? I do not either. You won't prove anything to the command. It turns out the FPV, which are allocated to units, are purchased by the Russian Federation Ministry of Defense for our taxes and are used for videos and not for a combat mission. That is, if the position of the Ukrainians is such that you cannot get close, but you will lose 10 drones to neutralize a machine gunner who is not visible and there will be no spectacular video, then the gold is not worth it. Let the infantry rush and die in droves, because the commander will spoil his statistics, and let the mobilized taxpayer die, saving kamikazes and not worsening the statistics. Videos of kamikazes destroying pickup trucks are pretty, but it complicates the life of the enemy, teaches him to move in small groups, to dig in effectively, but almost does not help in carrying out a real combat mission, not TikTok show off. The Ukrainians lose dozens of birds without reaching the goal, but continue to attack. Does the job as a result. They can spend up to 7 to 8 FPV drones on one infantryman. I experienced it myself. Yes, I understand about theft, profitability, targeted spending, performance indicators, and the problem with debugging this work, but you yourself got in and pushed your competitors out with your elbows. Get the criticism from the bottom now. And there are problems with purchasing consumables from China. There are rumors that someone monopolized them. I won't hint without investigating, but he described the picture correctly. Rumor has it that an unpleasant story is still brewing with the monopolization in the market, when we will be prohibited from buying anything except VT-40 PVC-1s with the MOD money. There are such rumors. I can't talk to exactly what's going on with the end of that, but any issue for Russia getting hold of drones from China, or maybe the type of drones, is, I guess, good news for Ukraine. So problems there in the context of drones. Tim White says, I'm reposting this translation, although I'm skeptical until it's confirmed. One channel alleges that 20 Russian troops were poisoned by 2 female compatriots in Crimea. So tragedy occurred in one of the military units in Simferopol. According to military sources stationed in Crimea, the criminals used poisoned alcohol and food. 2 nice girls came to the checkpoint of the military unit and introduced themselves as local residents. They bought 7 bottles of vodka and some snacks, fish, sausage, bread and cheese. They told the guards they wanted to thank our boys for everything, for protecting them. The guys took vodka and food, drank with their colleagues and ate, and many were poisoned. So, yeah, huge doses of arsenic and strychnine was found in one of the bottles. 24 soldiers died, 11 more were hospitalized. The criminals could not be found, and the investigation is underway. Law enforcement officers are investigating whether the killers are connected with saboteurs from Melitopol, who recently poisoned several FSB officers. That's the translation. Take it with a pinch of salt, but could well have happened, and that would be really good news for the Ukrainian partisan efforts in Crimea. Right, quote, Ukrainian resistance forces destroyed several Russian soldiers and destroyed an enemy refueling station in Melitopol. Other military equipment was also damaged, according to the Ukrainian main director of intelligence. The attack was carried out on December the 1st at noon. So there is this, I guess, growing sense of partisan, that there is, increased partisan activity in a number of places. Melitopol has always been sort of fairly active in terms of partisans, Crimea as well. A fire has occurred at the production facility of the Ozerny mining and processing plant in Buryatia. So this is quite far over to the east of Russia. What's interesting here is the plant's only been in operation since the summer of this year, relatively new plant, and it is a very big fire. I presume that's going to help Ukraine in some way as well. Right, okay, not too much to report in terms of strikes. Last evening and night, Russia launched 12 Shahed drones. 10 were shot down, so 10 out of 12 is a fairly decent interception rate. A launched Kh-59 missile did not reach its target. And that's all I know, really, other than Khmelnytsky Oblast was targeted. Explosions were heard. Don't know any details. Air defense was active. There is Staro-Konstantinivka air base is in Khmelnytsky, so that could be one of the targets there. On the other hand, Krasnodar inside Russia, there are explosions there yesterday afternoon, as well as explosions at Melitopol airfield, 70 kilometers from the front. That could have been targeted by HIMARS or ATACMS or drones or who knows. And then on to other bits and pieces, just to finish off this rather quick video today. But I have to say, my mood is generally quite down at the moment. Last 24 hours, I've done a bit of thinking, and some of the news coming out, first of all, from Republican politicians in America are looking like they aren't that interested in Ukraine aid and are going to try and leverage a load of border stuff again out of the attempted aid package. And this really annoys me because they just don't see Ukraine as important. If you saw it as important, you wouldn't be trying to do bargains over it. You'd be on prima facie wanting to get that funding through. If you genuinely thought Ukraine was important, you'd be like, we need to support Ukraine. So, yep, I support that bill. If you don't think it's important, then you'd say, so what's going on here is they say, well, the Democrats think that's important. So therefore, we are going to leverage that with the Democrats with something that we think is important. So we don't think Ukraine, it seems to be perfectly obvious that at least many Republican lawmakers do not see Ukraine as an important problem that needs to be solved. And as a result, it gets used as a political football. And apparently the rumours are it's going to continue to be used as a political football. So that annoys me. Then you've got the issue with Ukrainian boots on the ground. I think they really do need more boots on the ground. So you've got mobilization issues. You've got equipment issues, partly because of funding coming from the US, but also, other countries around the world where we just need to kind of mobilize our own war economies to support. We need to put a lot of money into sorting out production to get as much stuff as we can to Ukraine as physically possible. And that's kind of annoying me. And the Russians they've regained the initiative in a number of places. And I think the Ukrainians are under the cosh along the front line. And it's one of these periods where, my head dips a little bit and I think we really need to sort this out. And we're not doing a very good job of sorting this out, and thinking that how many countries are supporting Ukraine and how many countries are supporting Russia. So Russia is pretty much a pariah state, yet obviously it's got massive stockpiles in terms of equipment and indeed human beings. And so therefore, it's able to continue to draw out this conflict far longer than it needs to. It's really annoying me. Anyway, airplane problems continue in Russia, according to Anton Gerashchenko. So an A321 plane flying from St. Petersburg to Moscow made an emergency landing at Sheremetyevo Airport, presumably due to a left engine failure, according to RIA Novosti. Well, actually, Gerashchenko then goes on to say 5 Russian planes have broken down during flight in 2 days. The planes of Russian airlines, which are left without spare parts and maintenance due to sanctions, continue to break down frequently. In the first 2 days of winter, as many as 5 airliners broke down, according to Russian media. So an Aeroflot Airbus A321 made an emergency landing at Pulkovo Airport, St. Petersburg, due to cockpit air conditioning system display triggering. Boeing 737 made an emergency landing in Yuzhno-Sakhalinsk. At the time, an indication of drop in pressure in one of the 6 wheels of the landing gear went off. In Novosibirsk, the autopilot and flaps of the Aero plane failed after taking off from Tolmachevo Airport. Aeroflot Airbus A321 we just learnt about, left engine failure, and a Yamal Airlines Superjet 100 landing in Tyumen-Roschino Airport due to a technical reason. So this is becoming a real issue for the Russians. Their civil aviation industry is suffering at the moment. How much will it continue to suffer? Will they stop doing flights by grounding airplanes, or will they just take the risk and watch airplanes fall out of the sky? I don't know. In an interview with Associated Press, Zelensky said that the prisoner exchange continues, often right on the battlefield. Quote, most of the time these exchanges are not announced. When we have 10 of them and they have a few of our guys, we exchange them. Commanders know what to do, he emphasized. This comes on the back of actually there being announcements that they aren't doing prisoner exchanges at the moment. So maybe they aren't doing like centralized, organized prisoner exchanges, but localized prisoner exchanges between units, as Zelensky hints at there. So the contradictory information. Russians executed 2 Ukrainian soldiers who were surrendering after a long fight. So I've talked about this a bit yesterday and how much it annoys me. Obviously, watching people get executed in a video is not my cup of tea. And it just goes to show what the Russians are made of, really. There are claims that this happened in Stepova, and actually the whole area was then retaken by the Ukrainians. But I don't know whether that's a bit of PR. But nonetheless, there was this execution that took place of surrendered POWs. It is a blatant war crime. It is an obvious war crime caught on camera. There's no contestation to that. And lots of people are reminding, I guess, viewers, reminding us, the public, of that guy that said, was it Slava Ukraini or whatever he said when he's smoking that cigarette as a surrendered POW and then was executed by a bunch of Russians. And the statue's now been made of that. That was another one of these very obvious war crimes. As a result of this video, Ombudsman Dmytro Lubinets will appeal to the UN about this, so that the organization records this fact as another vivid example of violation of international humanitarian law by the Russian Federation and military. He also hopes the intelligence will be able to physically identify the culprits. I'd be amazed if they could do that. According to Deep State, it happened near Stepover, when the Russians entered the positions of the 45th Separate Rifle Battalion. We have news that the Russians are paying wives of soldiers in Ukraine not to stage protests, according to UK Defence Intelligence update. I talked about this yesterday. It said research by independent Russian media outlets and comments by protesting wives themselves suggest that in recent weeks the authorities have likely offered increased cash payments to families in return for them refraining from protest. On November the 27th, one prominent online group for soldiers' wives published a manifesto against indefinite mobilization. On around 31st, the group was pinned with a fake warning label, likely at the instigation of pro-Kremlin actors. The authorities are likely particularly sensitive to any protests related to those citizens mobilized in September 2022 who have now been at the front line for over a year. So this is this is a continued issue for Russia, as we are seeing more and more of these videos, not only of units themselves on the front line complaining and refusing to commit to the orders they've been given, but also relatives and particularly wives and mothers giving kind of protest videos saying, and they're not necessarily against the war. You've got to remember that. They're against, more often than not, the treatment of their kin in terms of compensation, in terms of communication, in terms of not getting compensation for their partner or husband or son being dead, but then being listed as missing, and all these kind of claims that you hear. But yeah, lots of complaints, and the Russian authorities are coming, it seems to me at any rate, that the Russian authorities are coming down on those protests and stifling those voices. On the other hand, in Ukraine, quote, victory is everyone's responsibility. Wives of Ukrainian servicemen demand demobilization after 18 months of service in Kyiv. So yes, I was talking about how Ukraine are facing some mobilization issues, but part of that also concerns issues of conditions on the front line and also demobilization. So these guys that signed up as volunteers at the beginning of the war have now been going for 18 months without a break. So the topic of additional mobilization is extremely urgent, says Euromaidan Press. Most soldiers who joined the army in February 2022 are still serving. So there needs to be some understanding of, like, okay, when you get to serve until, how long are your contracts actually? What breaks are you sort of entitled to, so on and so forth. And obviously they need to do that. On the one hand, Ukraine are, they're facing an existential threat, and they might not exist, going into the future. But on the other hand, they need to look after the very people who are fighting the defense of that very existence. So, yeah, problems. Anyway, thank you for watching. Please like, subscribe, and share. I'll give you a bit more meat on the bones to my views, of like how I'm a little bit jittery at the moment. In my next video, particularly with regard to military aid and assistance and the geopolitical situation in places like, for example, the US, in terms of what's going on in the Congress there. So you can look forward to that. Anyway, take care, everyone. Speak soon.